in from me from Castle Goring. Well, today is a very special day because Nazanin Zaghari-Radcliffe was finally freed after 6 torturous years by the theocratic authority in Iran, because we, the British people, had nothing to do with the fact that the British government had trousered £400 million of Iran's money. They purchased tanks, which we never delivered. We simply just kept the money, and since then, and this all happened at the time of the revolution, which took place in 1979, we have hung on to Iran's £400 million. And finally, they decided they were going to treat our citizens, but they treated one of their citizens, because she's a joint Iranian stroke British citizen, with the disrespect and the inhumanity that we, the British nation, had treated, well, actually it's not the British nation, it's the British government, had treated Iran so dishonourably for well nigh on 40 years. Incredible when you stop to think of it. And the only reason why Mrs. Radcliffe has finally been freed is that the British government has finally done the right thing and paid back Iran the money it owed them. Because, you know, we need to understand in life that we're not always in the right. And when we are in the wrong, we need to put up our hands and do the right thing, which, fortunately, Boris Johnson's government has twigged they needed to do, because the Iranians made it absolutely clear that they were going to keep this poor, innocent woman in prison as long as it took for us to honour our debt to them. I don't know which bit of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So many people and governments, and of course governments are made up of people, usually ambitious people, usually power-crazed people, or certainly power-hungry or power-interested people. I don't know which bit of this they don't understand, that if you don't want others to do it to you, you shouldn't do it to them. Now, I'm not justifying the Iranian conduct in having detained on the charges of spying a young mother and had her and her child in a prison. I don't think that's right, but I can certainly understand why, after decades of trying to get their money back from the British government, and the British government refusing to give them their money back with endless excuses about they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that, sanctions, blah, 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 blah. They finally took matters into their own hands. And I have spoken to Iranians about this, and they have said that as far as the government was concerned, the fate of one woman had to be balanced against the fate of many people, because $400 million is a lot of money and would serve well a lot more people than one individual in Iran. And the reasoning is impeccable. I don't think it's necessarily right, but in the circumstances, it's certainly understandable. And this leads me to John Sullivan's comment from Dostoyevsky. Quote unquote, tolerance will reach such a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as to not offend the imbeciles. So Fyodor Dostoyevsky said that in the 19th century, and we are now in the 21st century, and his comment is very apposite, because society is reaching the stage where tolerance is regarded as a necessity, but if you do not go along with those aspects of tolerance which are regarded as politically correct, you will not be tolerated. You will be silenced, you will be cancelled. And rarely that degree of orthodoxy is always ominous, and indeed does lead to imbecility, because one thought can never dominate. Because if one thought dominates to the exclusion of all other thoughts, that means that we are not thinking. And also, if the nuances and the texturing and the layering and the complexities of life are not factored into the everyday equation, it means that the imbeciles rarely have taken over. And that's why we see so much imbecility today. That's why we see so much intolerance posing as tolerance. Because to be so tolerant that you ban people from intelligent thought means that you are intolerant and that it is anti-life. Now, to go on to rather lighter matters. I'm sure some of you are going to say, thank God. Anne Parker says, I imagine that the Queen and Prince Charles are somewhat relieved Harry will not be at the memorial service. The atmosphere must be lovely colours today. Thank you. I think you were referring to my turquoise jumper. Thank you very much. My understanding is that everybody has heaved a massive sigh of relief that they do not have to embrace the asp to their bosom, and that they do not have to dance on eggshells, walk on broken glass, avoid hot coals, be very careful what they say for it to be twisted and weaponized. And that, things are very, very bad, contrary to what Sunshine Sachs would like you to believe. Things are very, very bad between Harry and everybody else. Don't for a second believe that they are good. They are not good. The situation is causing tremendous distress and tremendous upset. And there is no solution in sight. Exercise a little understanding and a little humanity and a little empathy, and you actually have to feel for everyone. And yes, massive relief that Harry is not going to be there, nor, of course, is the creature that he married. Simone Z says, question for Lady C. May I suggest that there are some sound arguments to be made for snobbery in certain quarters, although I didn't used to think that way until the advent of Markle into the royal fold. This is when I understood why the royals and the aristocracy have always been so protective of their inner circles. I myself come from a middle-class family. My father was a school headmaster and a historian, and my mother's family were well-to-do. They weren't snobs by any means, but they did not approve of interclass marriages due to the cultural divide, the pretentiousness, and you could say also the potential for vulgar misuse of social status and wealth. This is what we've basically been seeing from Harry's wife, and what has caused such an uproar in the world. Had she come from a similar background to Harry's, not necessarily royal, but at least at par in manners and worldview, we would not now be experiencing this wide divide caused by her and her champions. In fact, her behaviour is more snobbish than the family she married into. Her entire demeanour has been crass and superior, which is the antithesis of classy. I wonder if you would be so good as to tackle this topic in one of your videos. I can almost see members of the aristocracy look down their noses at Harry's wife and sniffling their disapproval simply out of deference to the Queen. But I'd be interested to know the truth of what they really think about this in our time. I know that if anyone will speak truthfully, it will be you! Exclamation mark. Thank you. I've been following your channel since you first launched it. I find every discussion very interesting and never miss one. Thank you. Well, that is a weighty, weighty matter. And you have hit many nails on the head, Simone said. It's very interesting. My father used to drive me absolutely crazy by using the word suitable. And my mother was a terrible snob, as indeed was her father. And I have to tell you that although I loved my grandfather, after he died, I gradually realized there was a benefit to his no longer being around, because he used to micromanage all our interactions to such an extent that if I wanted to have a friend back for tea of whom he and or mummy did not approve, always on the grounds of background, I've got to tell you, never on any other grounds, I wasn't allowed to have them back for tea. And when Grandpa died, things loosened up a bit. Not much, but a bit. And I couldn't wait to get out of that environment with the constant regulation and suppression and oppression. However, when the whole Markle debacle started, I too thought Daddy had a point. Daddy had a point. I did also think it wasn't only based on class, because, I mean, my father violently disapproved of my ex-husband. And you couldn't say that my ex-husband wasn't from a suitable class, because he was the son of a duke. So he was definitely not from an unsuitable background socially, but in other aspects he was. And my father disapproved of him violently. And I used to think that Daddy and Mummy were too restrictive. Snobbish wasn't quite the word for Daddy, but it certainly was for Mummy. Until Meghan happened along, and then I thought, gosh, it really makes sense to keep the barriers up, because look at what you let in just by mixing with the flotsam and the jetsam and the rabble. But it's not only on class grounds, it's really on character grounds, because loads of people are from different classes and have sterling, wonderful characters. And also, sterling virtues are not restricted to the privileged classes. I mean, you can be a peasant and have the dignity of a duke or a duchess, and the manners of royalty. Good manners, not Harry's manners. But yes, I certainly did think that Daddy had a point, and I think you have a point. I just think it's not necessarily based on class. Having said that, I think Meghan's behaviour was worth clamping down upon from the word go. And yes, the way she has behaved towards people has been extremely crass and snobbish and superior. I know from friends of mine who attended events with her where they were nice to her and she was seriously rude to them for no reason at all, except she obviously had decided early on, if not from before the wedding ring was on her finger, that she was not going to fit in. She was going to find everything wrong to move Harry to the United States of America, where she could monetize, materialize, manufacture, realize her dream of ending up with a nest egg. I know that several people who have met Meghan in the aristocracy and who were prepared to like her and went out of their way to be nice to her, ended up being absolutely appalled by the cavalier, crass, crude, rude, arrogant, impertinent, and really just ill-bred way that she behaved towards them. I mean, she was shockingly rude and contemptuous, and look how superior I am, and and just classy, and I mean, honestly, anything but. Endless Possibilities says, Lady C, in my opinion, as a black woman myself, I am very quick to observe how Meghan's rags to riches story is usually associated with her black mother. Every time she mentions her difficult and financially poor upbringing, she mentions her black mother in the narrative. I find that highly offensive and disturbing. Her mother has a degree and a successful career. Why isn't that being highlighted? In my opinion, it shows a slight discrimination against how she views that part of her ethnic background. This is all alleged, of course. Tell me your thoughts. My thoughts are that you're absolutely right. But it's not limited to that. Meghan's mother is a modest success. Meghan's grandfather, Meghan's mother's father, was a successful second-hand dealer. Antique, they called it. But I mean, I think a lot of the things really weren't antique. But she says, how much you can believe this is something else again, that he taught her an appreciation of antiques. I think she thinks that anything that's more than 6 weeks old is an antique, but there we go. But the grandfather was successful, not rich, but modestly successful. Her mother, she is a qualified social worker, so she's successful in a modest way. And what's wrong with being successful in a modest way? And what's wrong with not appreciating the success? A lot is wrong with not appreciating the success. And Meghan doesn't. Because Meghan has a high-blown opinion of herself and of her deserts, just and otherwise. There is a snobbish and a racist element to Meghan's attitude that is, it conveys contempt in a very disturbing and discomforting manner. I agree. She uses her mother and her mother's race to pretend that she is disadvantaged. But there are loads of very successful black people. Her mother happens to be one. Her mother's a success. She may not be tremendously rich, but she is a success. Is that celebrated? No, it's denigrated. It is not only snobbish, it is racist. But we are dealing with a woman whose conduct leads one to the inescapable conclusion that she is the most crashing snob and a ruthless opportunist who will stoop to any level, including race baiting and race denigrating, as and when it suits her. Ilya Kemp says, well, he won't get a standing ovation in The Hague, I'm sure of that. But Harry feels safe in Holland? Question mark. What a joke! Exclamation mark. We can see through the petulance of their behaviour as we respect our elders and treat our families with loyalty without needing to be credited for each thing we do for them. We Dutch folk see right through the nonsense! Exclamation mark. The Dutch people have much respect for the British Queen. I have read this out because it is representative of things that other Dutch people have been saying. Harry has made a mockery of himself, of royal dignity, of civilized and modest and refined and elegant behaviour. If he gets a standing ovation, well, it might be orchestrated by the organisers, because practically everything I go to nowadays, the obligatory standing ovation is orchestrated by the organisers. So he might get one if only the first 10 people, and the cameras will pan that. If he doesn't, that's fine too. But I gather that the Dutch people do see right through Harry. And you know, I don't think the Dutch people are unique. The fact of the matter is most decent people anywhere in the world respects their elders, respects family loyalty, and doesn't want to see unseemly displays of treachery and of disloyalty and of denigration of family, nation, and of good sterling virtues. Nana Amma says, why have they registered their children's names so that no one can get financial gain from using them, and yet they want the pharmaceutical companies to let go of their patents? Very good question, Nana Amma. Well, the answer, my dear, is obvious. The pharmaceutical companies are not Harry and Meghan. So Harry and Meghan preach to everybody else what they must do. You've got to be generous. You've got to remove your profitability. You've got to remove advantages. You've got to be stripped of all your entitlement because we say so. But we must keep all our advantages. We have the right to retain all our advantages, and we are going to do it. And they have set it up so that they will. It's not only their children that they have done this with. They've done this with everything, including the kitchen sink. They have cast such a wide net in terms of what they can milk monetarily and what no one else can milk monetarily, that their applications fell at the first post initially because it was too wide a remit. Greed, greed, greed. Liv Hemingway says, Lady C, here in the US, our prison attire is orange. Could... Oh, God. Sorry. Could he possibly be subconscious? Could he possibly be subconsciously screaming for help from being imprisoned by his old ball and chain? Laugh out loud. Well, I am laughing out loud. No prospect of that, my dear. No prospect of that. It's two fingers to the Dutch royal family, the Dutch nation. It's along the lines of roasting chicken and waffles. Look how clever we are. Nobody knows that we're giving everybody a finger and we're just mocking them because we're so clever, because people who have our tastes and interests are always cleverer than everybody else. Yes, we are. That's why we can make fools of all of you. Roasting chicken. Yes. Proposing over a roasted chicken. Waffles, waffles. He's not screaming to get away. He's screaming for other reasons. But let's wait and see what happens, because their relationship is extremely complex and really rather interlocking and interesting. It really is the most glorious demonstration of folly adair. Two people well matched. Charles Spangberg says, "Dear Lady C, hi from the Netherlands. The colour orange hair has become synonymous with football and the King's Day. On both occasions, people from the rural parts of our country gather on our doorstep in the centre of Amsterdam, dressed like Harry did. It has more to do with getting intoxicated and using substances." What are substances? I'm not sure I know what he means. No idea. "Than with our royal house of Orange nowadays. Sport is just the excuse. I would like to add that his choice of wearing orange from head to toe makes me wonder if he is sending up the Dutch royal family as he does his own, the Dutch being of the House of Orange. Two birds with one stone." Charles Spangberg, two birds with one stone, I'm sure. Absolutely right. It's taking the mickey, as they say in England. But it's puerile, it's childish, it's disrespectful, it's actually distasteful, and it simply makes him look like the arse that he really is, a total jackass. You know, roasted chicken sense of humour. Gosh, roasted chicken. I proposed while roasting the chicken. Clever, clever me. Elizabeth Ensling says, "Lady C, I am in South Africa and we have 25 million doses of vaccine. But if 100,000 is not taken up before the end of March, they will have to be destroyed due to the dwindling interest in patronage on the part of citizens," South African health authorities said on Friday. That is a quote starting with from 100,000. So much for Meghan and Harry preaching about the dastardly drug companies. And incidentally, to those of you who don't remember, Astra Zeneca waived all its profits and its creators waived all of their profits from the vaccine. Let's remember that. So when Harry and Meghan are preaching to the awful British companies and the ghastly mean British people, racist of course, racist. And of course these horrid white racist people who are going to deprive black people of their right to live like hanging on to the vaccines. Well, Astra Zeneca has always been a non-profit, Harry and Meghan. And Harry and Meghan, if you believe in freedom, which you don't, what are you going to do? Lasso them? Put them in pens? Shoot them up? And then say how noble you are? Or the vaccines are going to have to be destroyed, and they are being destroyed in their millions, because there is a debate, and I'm awfully sorry, Harry and Meghan, you're not always on the right side of any question. In fact, you're usually on the side of the imbeciles and the dotes, because you just don't seem to understand that you're dealing with people, not cattle. You can't herd them into pens, lasso them, even at a rodeo, and shoot them up and force them. It can't be done. Although, of course, in the new world that you're aiming to create, not only will it be done, but they won't be able to complain about it, because they won't be able to complain at all, because freedom of speech will be abolished, along with freedom of choice. Colin Campbell says, Lady C, in my opinion, I think this situation with Meghan and Harry will strangely resolve itself in a few years, because, quite frankly, I think that their marriage will be disintegrating by then and beyond repair. And I think a lot of it will be Harry's fault, based on that foolish and less than royal behaviour of his, wearing that orange outfit. He might very well be back using substances again, and the royal family isn't covering up for him anymore. There's an old saying, character is fate, and Harry has bad character. So I think a bad fate awaits him. What do you think? Well, I think that if you're speaking about substances, I don't think we're going to be limiting the journey of discovery to Harry alone, when we can simply remember that Meghan flagrantly broke Jamaican law, compromised everybody at the hotel, opened up everybody to the possibility of being raided and thrown into a Jamaican prison, because ganja was illegal in those days, and she distributed spliffs to every single one of her wedding guests. So, substances, I would have thought, is one of the many interests that Harry and Meghan will at some point have dovetailed with. Maybe not now, and I say that for legal reasons, but certainly of their own admission and conduct in the past. Neither of them has been whiter than the freshly driven snow. Of course, it depends what snow you're speaking about. So I need to be careful what analogy I use. Does Harry have a bad character? Does Meghan have a bad character? Which one has a worse character? The evidence of their conduct is that both of their characters are not what I would want in a child of mine. And yes, Heraclitus said, character is destiny. I have often said it. And character is destiny. if you don't have a good character, that doesn't mean you can't succeed. Many people with bad characters have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Many people with good characters have failed and have not succeeded in a worldly sense. But have they succeeded in the truest sense? In the spiritual sense? In the sense where they are people worth knowing because they have good characters? That is the ultimate success, not worldly success. What sort of fate do I think awaits Harry? Well, I would have originally said that my understanding was that Harry was actually a nicer person than Meghan. But you know, when the metal gets twisted, sometimes it can't be twisted back without snapping. And the problem with distorting yourself is that you can end up being completely unrecognizable. And at this point, I wouldn't be taking bets as to which one has a character that I would regard as less admirable. I think she's cleverer than he is. I think we can see from what's going on and the complete idiot he's been making of himself that she has hunkered down and is letting him lay the ground with lots of banana skins for him to go flying all about the place when he starts to run on them. Clever. I don't think it's going to end well. Maybe they will come to their senses. Maybe they will turn over new leaves. Maybe pigs will fly. Let's see. But at the moment, I don't think either one is what I would call admirable. And yes, character is destiny. And we're seeing it play out on a glorious level. And on that note, I will say, I have been asked to address certain issues that I am going to address, just not right yet. Because I am going to be very careful to not rain on other people's parade at this point. But I will be addressing the issues that people have been asking me to address. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. If you have found this enjoyable, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions coming in. This can't be done without you. Godspeed. Goodbye.